There's been anger before in America. There's been division before in America. But we've never given up on the American experiment. We can't do that now. The remarkable thing about American democracy is this: just enough of us, on just enough occasions, have chosen not to dismantle democracy, but to preserve democracy. We must choose that path again.
That was another moment from President Biden's pre-midterm speech last night, warning against threats to our nation's democracy. Joining us now, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Let's start.
I'm happy to be here, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you. You have an open invitation. Let's start there with President Biden's speech. Tell us why he chose to speak about this hugely important topic, threats to democracy, last night. How much of a role did the attack on Speaker Pelosi's play into the timing? And do you think that this was the right moment when polls show that it's the economy that voters care most about?
Look, the president, as you know, has spoken about this many times, Jonathan. You have followed the president for the past couple of years, and he has talked about the soul of our nation. He has talked about protecting our democracy. He has talked about the importance of strengthening our democracy. And look, if you look around and what's happening, the president last night used his bully pulpit at a time where we are seeing increased political violence, where we are seeing voter intimidation, and when we are seeing really extreme from the Republican Party, from these MAGA Republicans who are saying they are not going to acknowledge the results of the election. And the president felt that it was important to just have an honest conversation with the American people. We cannot pretend that this is not happening. It's being done blatantly in front of us. And as you said, that clip that you played, it's so important that the president laid out, we need to pick a path to democracy. And one thing that the president said last night, which is so true, you cannot say that you love your country only when you win. We as Americans have to continue to fight for our democracy. We have to continue to protect and strengthen our democracy, as I said at the top. And this is, again, this is something that the president has spoken about many, many times. We saw the attack on January 6th. We saw what happened in Charlottesville back in 2017. And we are continuing to see that same type of rhetoric that led to the political violence that we saw on Paul Pelosi, which was horrific. And so, yes, you heard directly from the president at a time that it is going to matter, Jonathan.
So, Karine, we just talked about how the Federal Reserve raising interest rates again to try to cool off inflation, but that has sparked real fears that the nation could be teetering on the edge of a recession. How will the White House prepare for that?
So, want to be clear, there are no meetings or anything happening like that in preparing for a recession because, and I'll say this very clearly, and we have said this, our economic team has said this, Secretary Yellen has said this, you heard this from the president. Look, what we're seeing right now is a strong labor market, and the reason we're seeing the strong labor market is because of the bold actions that this president has taken. When you look at his economic policies, look, we are seeing a unemployment rate at 3.5%, something that we haven't seen in 50 years. Again, a strong labor market. All of the things that I just laid out, the data points that I just laid out, does not lead to a recession, does not define a recession or even define a pre-recession. Look, what we're seeing currently is a transition. You've heard us talk about this, Jonathan. You've been in the briefing room with me. You've heard it from Brian Deese. You've heard it from me and from others saying that we are heading into a transition from a stable and steady growth without losing any of the gains that we have made, and that's because of the economic policy. So we want American people, the president wants the American people to know that he is doing everything that he can to make sure that we keep those gains, but also our number one priority is to lower those costs for the American people. That's what you have seen the president do with gas prices, taking those bold actions. That's why we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and we're going to continue to see the president work on that every day.
So we are just now 5 days from the midterms, and there are Democrats in a number of states, particularly Arizona, who have voiced real concern about so-called poll watchers who are there at ballot places that these voters say are intimidating and perhaps preventing people from wanting to come out to vote. Is there anything that the White House and the Department of Justice can do about that?
So I want to be very clear. The president believes, as you heard him say yesterday, that he believes that the American people, the right to vote is the most sacred right, right? It is a sacred right that we need to make sure that we protect. The president is going to continue to say that, make his voice very loud and clear. You'll see the agencies, Department of Justice and other agencies working together, working with local officials to make sure that we protect the right to vote for all Americans. Again, it is a sacred right. It is something that we need to protect. This is something that Democrats, congressional Democrats, and the president focus on in Congress every day because we believe in that. That's why you heard from the president last night, making sure that these election deniers, like calling out election deniers, calling out the political violence, asking for these extreme folks on the other side, on these MAGA Republicans, to really take down this rhetoric because it is dangerous, and we need to make sure that we're protecting our democracy for all Americans.
President Biden back on the road later today. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, safe travels, and thank you for joining us. We will speak to you again soon.
Thank you, Jonathan.